welcome to Nacht Waffen Pilot with Penny Bradley. And today my guest is Gabriel Hackney, who is one of the current experts on social media about the Anunnaki and their interactions with humans today. And towards the end of the show, he'll talk about his new Reiki business. So, welcome, Gabriel.
Hello, how's everyone doing this evening? Or afternoon, where you are?
Yes, you have to understand this is a global radio network. So there are some people it's the middle of the night, and some it's bright daylight, and then there's others of us who don't represent the local time at all. We just do our own thing.
That's wonderful. That's a really good way of looking at it from a global perspective because the sun never sets somewhere.
Exactly. Or as the old song says, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Precisely.
So, yeah. Um, So I'd like to thank you for coming on my show with such short notice. I appreciate that more than anyone can understand. And I'm really honored to have you.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
So, as I said, you are one of the experts in my world on the Anunnaki. And I guess we need to describe the Annuna community.
Yes, the community is very vast and for good reason. If we think about the Anunnaki, just like any other species in the galaxy, universe, multiverse, and even in ways that are without the dimension that we think of with these physical bodies. The whole purpose of this, what we could call an experiment, is the evolution of life. Now, why would they come here in the first place? Well, naturally, there are the stories about how there was gold found on the middle planets and the inner planets. And of course, that's a very good reason because gold is a very wonderful element for technology. And not only technology in the traditional physical sense for ensuring that machines stay working and do not corrode as easily. But technology is far more than simply what is physical. It is also what is energetic. And just as there are machines in the traditional sense for all the technology that we see around us, machine can also be used to describe a pattern of thought, a pattern of emotion. And just as we make machines in the world around us to fuel our societies and systems and productivity and even health with the newfound ways of farming through farm buildings and technologies like these and bioresearch, machines can also be developed in the sense of the emotional connection. And this emotional machine attaches the body to the spirit for lessons that we have to learn through it. And just as there are these emotional machines, there are also these mental machines which create the bridge between the emotional machines and the physical machines. And all of this is so that we can grow energetically as spiritual beings. But why is this? And why would the Anunnaki or so many of the other races involved be interested in this? For the sole reason of evolution. When we look at nature, what do we see? We see the birds, we see the animals, we see the chipmunks, the squirrels, and we see the fish, and then we see all the insects. And all of these are machines as well. And all of this is so that spirit can grow, evolve, interact, and develop, not simply by itself, but together. And just as the fruit tree bears fruit for the animals then go to eat the fruit, and then one day, when their life is over, they become food for the tree. And in the meantime, the animals are producing all sorts of fruit through what they leave behind through their droppings. So it's a very beautiful system. And the Anunnaki, just like many of the other races, are very aware of this system. And if it was not for their interaction here on Earth, we may not have evolved as greatly in the many ways of evolution through our interactions with other beings. But we may not have also evolved as greatly through our spiritual interactions with them, with the life on this planet, and the many people that we have been before, whether it's from here, another star system, another universe, or perhaps from somewhere else. It's for a shared purpose of harmony, but many forget to see this. And that's for good reason, because we need the separation. But just as we need those times of revelation to reveal the veil, to lift it up, we also need those times for the veil to come down so that we can have that individuality, so that we can grow in our individualness. Because if we did not have the individual bodies, the beings, some sort of separation, then what happens when everything becomes drawn together? You can't make sense of anything. And so we need to learn how to make sense through our evolution as individual beings so that we can become part of this greater collective, so that we can become, in so many beautiful ways, more connected.
Okay, having raised children, I understand the individuation and connection modes, because children go through stages as they develop, and most of the individuation stages are in even years, 2, 4, 6, and the connection stages are in the odd numbered years. So where a 2-year-old will scream, "No, mine!" a 3-year-old is saying, "Here, let me show you how to do this." So, yeah, I get that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's, you make a very good point with the children. What did the Mayan gods call this planet? They called it the planet of the children. And why is that?
Because at least half of us are baby souls learning everything.
Yes, you could say it like that. And another reason is because the human species, it doesn't live very long, does it?
No.
In the grand scheme.
Not relative to other races, no. Most other races, you're talking at least 500 years, and ours we're lucky if we make 80.
or 50. And for the
Come on,
past,
I just turned 65. Cut me some slack here.
I'm not talking about in this modern age. I'm
Okay.
talking about throughout the past 10,000 years. And
The past
especially,
10 the past 10,000 years, the average life expectancy for human females was 25 years because so many died during the first childbirth.
yes. And why did that happen? We weren't so very advanced in our technology, correct? We weren't
That's part of it.
so we weren't so very advanced in our nutritional regimens. But what happened when societies realized the importance of nutrition? They started to respect their bodies more. And because they started to respect their bodies more, they began to develop greater societies so that they could produce better crops through their farming. And it is when we learn how to start respecting ourselves for what we need and what each other needs, we learn how to work together more collectively. And for the majority of the time that the human being has spent on this planet living short lives, it has been for this reason, to relearn this lesson over and over again. But why? Look at the earth, look at the nature. There is a certain harmony to nature with the animal world, with the animal spirits. They live in the nature of the animals, of their ways. And that's not very so much of the mind. It's more of spirit. It's more of a grounded nature. They can connect more with spirit, but it doesn't mean that they have the technological savvy as the human being does.
Mhm.
So the human being then comes along with the help of many different people and many different elements coming together, and not just the Anunnaki, but many people who work in conjuncture, because the Anunnaki, they're simply one part in the collective ecosystems.
Mhm.
And just as we have been learning how to respect ourselves and this connectedness for how we can continue to grow and evolve and live longer, better lives, part of the reason this has been happening is because we are changing the frequency of the earth. It's like is it the 100 monkey experiment, something like that,
Yeah.
where they teach the monkey something and then suddenly in the monkey mind around the world they start doing the same thing.
The species gestalt learns it. And at that point, everybody in that species understands it. My understanding is that instead of the actual number 100, that it's 5% of the human population. Does that resonate with you?
It depends on what level you're speaking of, because it can resonate on a much greater scale if people undergo a shift where they need to see it. So everyone may understand it to a certain degree, or at least the majority, but that doesn't mean that's where their focus is.
Okay.
And a lot of that has to do with environmental influences. And as these areas of identification continue to come into view, the more people become aware of it through the changing of their lands. And the reason why I say that is because all the places that the people have traveled to, what has happened to the lands they have traveled on? when we go to look at the monks, for example, they will go into the caves to be quiet, and then eventually they will stumble upon or gravitate to, more precisely, certain areas where those before them have achieved enlightenment, and their energies will be imprinted on those rock materials. So when we go to certain land masses, just as we unintentionally imprint our energies in the lands around us, it is also very possible to intentionally imprint our energies on the lands around us. And a lot of this has been done through a very religious standpoint, where people will come together and they will drum. And when I mean religious, I don't just mean a book that people read and recite. When I mean religious, I mean a repetitive nature where it takes upon a person's core. And that's part of the reason why the Anunnaki have interacted here so greatly, because it is from a very religious standpoint to alter one's being so that they can grow in different ways through those repetitive practices. And I've spoken with one of the Incas before, many times, and just as I said earlier, very early on in this video, about the tree theory, about the evolution of it all, people are able to grow in different ways. So let's take the higher aspects of our being, and I don't necessarily say higher self, although there is a higher self, but a higher self is simply a part of our greater self. Our higher self can be a very vast multitude of beings as it continues to go on upward. But why is that? Well, just as they talk about the books of life in the biblical sense in the Bible, the Tibetans refer to it as the Akashic records, correct?
Yeah.
And all of this is because it's a recording. And how do you, let's say a person is a writer. I'm actually a writer, but let's just say a person is a writer and they're writing a book. Generally, they want one chapter to interact with another and then to the next, and for it to build, correct? And
that's the usual approach, but we all know not everyone does that.
right. And something similar can be said about the human life. The human life is very much like one chapter in a book that just seems to keep on going and going and going, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. We don't always remember what was written in the last chapter. And you know it's kind of like a hoodwink. So
yeah, I've been writing a book and I've been going through and rereading it before I start again, so that I'm continuing instead of starting over.
exactly. And the purpose of this chapter like method is so that we continue to not simply know it in our mind, but in our knowing, in our spirit. And if we don't learn the lessons from the last chapter, then we see if we can learn the lessons in the next chapter, and things will come into our lives and until we finally do continue to learn those lessons. But then we may have to learn those lessons again in the next life because of something that I refer to as energetic compression.
Well, so, when I realize that there's a pattern to the messes in my life, and we've discussed this privately, my what I do now is I just stop and I go, okay, I'm obviously supposed to be learning something from this. So cut to the chase and tell me what it is. And that has been the most helpful thing that I've done in years. Just say, okay. But yeah, those of us who have psi abilities strong enough to be able to speak with our guides and our higher self and these other levels of our own being have an easier time with this than the people who have not made that connection. So,
Yes, and that's why religions came about. By the way, can you guys see me?
yeah, I see you just fine.
Yeah, I was just
You mean the
wondering.
audience?
Yeah,
The YouTube is not is like stuck on just me.
okay.
That doesn't mean it will be on the replay. The version that's on YouTube is showing you.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
Well, hi everybody then.
and the radio version, they can't see either one of us. And that's where most of our listeners are.
Yes. Okay, so something else that I want to touch base on is the religions now in the religious sense with books and tablets and things like that. So this is what I was referring to as the emotional and mental machines.
Well, I want to make an insert here.
Okay.
All the earth religions that involve sky gods, those are Anunnaki. And all of them have books of one form or another that they all say they use, but in practice they don't. Their priesthood, whatever they call it, informs the people based on tradition rather than the book. So when you say the word religion, I know you are thinking religious thought system, but I hear organization, I hear priesthood, I hear
Well, yes, that
mind
too.
control.
That too, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Okay, so
I
something.
just threw a monkey wrench in you. I'm sorry.
No, that is a very pleasant monkey wrench
Okay.
because it opens up a lot of avenues for us to discuss. And this helps us not only to, expand the conversation for the show, but it also provides a lot of mental fodder for us to reflect in and as a result grow from. So that's very appreciated, Penny. Thank you. Okay, so something needs to be said about before we go into the whole mind control aspect. And I'm not necessarily saying like a person's placing a beam into your head and controlling your every movement. It can be a lot more subtle than that.
It usually is a lot more subtle than that, but
Exactly.
just as effective.
Yes, just as effective. So there is a very old story in Sumeria about Inky. And Inky had a message to share with the people. And the message, for what exactly was said, that's not the important part here. But what happened was the people thought he was saying something else when really he meant something very different. And this had to do with the phonetics of the words. Because when Inky said that certain thing and the people interpreted it differently, that was something for the people of that era to remember. And that is, something can be said one way, but something can be said, although one way could actually mean another. For example, the word hire can represent a person looking to hire an employee, or the word can be used to reference a higher state of being, such as the higher self, or a higher vantage point on the mountain compared to ground level or sea level. So, based on the words we use, people can become very confused. So, it's very important to be precise in our meanings. But just as it is very important to be precise in our meanings, but also meetings, um, it is very important for the people to have the open-ended conversations as well. For example, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We've probably heard that 1,000 times, but it is
Leave.
very, yes, but it is very, very true, because it can expand in so many different areas. It's like the description of a red screwdriver, for example. That's a that is something that a lot of psychologists, I'm not a psychologist, by the way, but that's something that a lot of psychologists like to use, is that they insert a color and then they insert the word tool, and it's like, what are you thinking of? And a lot of people will say red hammer, because they think of tool and they think of a hammer and they think of color and they think of red, and that's just because the color red is a very obvious, brilliant color to think of. So a lot of people say red hammer because that is what is in the societal mind, for a lot of people. But what about a red screwdriver or a blue screwdriver or a blue monkey wrench? Well, it reveals what people fall back on. But whenever we introduce an image to relay a meaning, it's important to reflect in our own lives for how this becomes interpreted, and each person is different. And just as the story with the Anunnaki, with how the people became confused upon the meaning, it's very important that this is one of the most important lessons that they've been trying to teach us still to this day, is that whenever something becomes introduced to us, is it coming from the societal mind? Is it coming from our mind? Or is it coming from the mind of the person who is sharing it with us? And that is so very important, because so many times people continue to fall into these cycles. And just as there are whirlpools and rivers and oceans, so too with the nature of what people believe in, because there is a energy flow to that, and then people will pick up on that and respond to that and then think that, and then that intensifies, and then they say that this is true, they felt it was true, when really they may have just been feeling what another person believed to be true, and that person may have been going off of what they felt was true in another person, and for that person to go off of what they believe was true because it's what they continued to view, rather than
Well,
expanding their
I've
sight.
had some issues with this in the SSP community, and the greater UFO community, because there are religious beliefs based on these priests to have certain viewpoints about other 3D physical beings, extraterrestrials. And I'm coming along with my personal experience from my time in space. And I'm trying to describe these very physical, 3D, real beings in the terms in which I experienced them. And I'm finding that people are quoting me the exact opposite of what I actually said.
Common problem.
And they are quoting me in their books the exact opposite of what I actually said. And it's really a major frustration for me.
That's why Inky tried to share it back then. It's like you want to stop the frustration, ask for clarity. It's like, don't just receive the message, ask what the message is about, get precise about it, because so many people tend to view things only through their viewpoint. And again, that's very much for the shared growth of our collective evolution, literally collective in our evolutions, so that we can create that separation and go through those hurdles and then relearn these lessons in new ways. But it's also through the people who err, who learn how to see things differently, because just as a person may see the number 9 from one point as 6, the other person may see it as 9. But that doesn't mean that one is right or wrong, but that doesn't also mean that one is not less true than the other. So that's something that has to be learned as well.
Yeah, well, in the meantime, I'm having to deal with all these people who think I'm saying one thing and it's the exact opposite of what I am. And going through and arguing with them isn't working.
Would you like to go into detail with me here?
um, because I served with the Germans in space, I have an intimate understanding of the way that their military culture operates. And yet every time I turn around, I'm saying these are German people. The culture is based on Teutonic Knights, and that even some of the officers wear spurs. I'm talking about using black goo as a enhancement to bring these officers up to the same level as the Anunnaki, and that there are effects to it. And I'm being told that even though I spent multiple trips of 60 and back with these people, that I don't know what I'm talking about, that these people are just Nazis and they're hateful and nasty and deserve to be exterminated. And that's just one example when I describe interactions with the Anunnaki themselves. And the ones I interact with call themselves Jahami, they don't call themselves Anunnaki. And they are 3D physical beings who are capable of using leaning in technology and appearing in my living room. And trust me, that's not something that you want to just happen without warning. These beings, we are designed to worship them, and the sudden appearance of them will turn me into a quivering mess, and I have to pull myself back together to interact with them. So they're not, people think that they're just like, oh yeah, they're the gods. So what? It ain't that way. You're giving me this look like you don't know how to deal with that. Okay, so this is emotional response to interacting with a being who is obviously more powerful and physically superior to me. And my instant reaction, even though I have been military trained, is to basically fall on my knees and worship. And I have to pull myself out of that because the position I'm in, they are coming to me asking for stuff. So, no, I'm not talking about that. So, but yeah, I just made a big mess of it. I'm sorry. I should have not said anything.
You're fine. I'll go into each of these with you. So you mentioned the black goo, right?
Yeah.
So obviously we know why they're doing it, but let's restate. Why are they doing it?
They are doing it because the average human intelligence is set at 100 IQ, and the average Anunnaki is at 3 to 400, and the average Draco is 4 to 500 on
Oh,
that same
okay.
scale. And with each 20 IQ points comes a completely different view of the world. It's the higher the IQ, the bigger the picture you can see, and the easier it is to manipulate those below you.
Are
And
you familiar with the glymphatic system?
yes,
Okay, so the glymphatic system not being the lymphatic system, but the system of the glia cells. For this is just to iterate for the viewers who are watching and listening. But the glymphatic system is the way that our neurons are protected from pathogens, and then those glia cells interact with those pathogens and they remove it from the brain. And how they do this is they essentially swim through the fluid medium
mm-hmm.
of the neural tissues. And then what they do from there is they hop on, quite literally, that they hop onto the where the blood vessels are. And the blood vessels in the brain, that is called the blood-brain barrier, being the tissue that the blood flows within. Um, so the tissue that supports that fluid, that blood to flow through the vessel, the vessel itself, the wall around it, that's the blood-brain barrier. And there are certain cells that attach themselves to the blood-brain barrier, and it creates a pathway. And then the cells are able to remove the toxins and the pathogens through this exterior system of the blood brain, just right outside the blood brain barrier. So they're literally able to remove toxins and pathogens on the pulse of blood, on the pulse of our heart beating, the vortex. It's not technically a beat because it's more of a vortex flow that produces the pulse. So that needs to be understood in the sciences, that it's not technically a beat because it is a vortex flow. So that it's not like beating as we think it is. But that is how the toxins and the pathogens are removed from our brains, but also for the opposite to be true, for the flow of nutrients to flow into the neural pathways for us to be fed. So if they are using any supplement, any substance, black goo, nutrition, whatever, there is a very important lesson here. I'll phrase it by using the example of what we describe in the very basic sense as the Garden of Eden in the Bible. Now, I'm not being literal in the sense of a garden. I'm being very metaphorical in the view here for what the garden represents. Now, here we have first man and first woman. This is not the representation of physical people, not in the metaphor of it. Now, them being as physical people, as actual people, that can be viewed through a different aspect, a different story element of it. But we're talking about the metaphor here. The man represents the exterior energy. Woman being from within man, the rib of man. Osho, he described it as a refinement. I don't necessarily consider it a refinement, but rather it is a part that is within, because it is to create the union, and hence Adam and Eve knew each other, knew, as in the exterior and the interior became one. And when we practice becoming one through the fundamental forces, we learn how to produce that quietness in our being, in our chakras, in our systems. And as we do these things, we learn how to become in our being and access these higher states of mind, such as what the Buddhists and other types of monks have been doing around the world for literally thousands of years, to access the nirvanic mind, the nirvana state, the Buddha mind.
This is a shortcut to that.
Yes.
Black goo is a shortcut, and it does cross the blood-brain barrier, and because it is a nanotech, it builds its own little fortress inside the brain and installs an AI component and entrains the brain for pure logic and leaves the emotional component out entirely. And it does stay there the whole time that you have it. Now, there is a technological way to remove it when they send us back. And I have repeatedly said this was taken out of me when I was sent back, and I have been repeatedly hit up by religious fanatics telling me it hasn't. So I have also been repeatedly hit up by religious fanatics telling me I need exorcism. And religious fanatics repeatedly telling me that my parents were involved in some sort of magic ceremony before I was born, and that's why this happened to me. They're all wrong. My parents were Christian religious fanatics in a Christian cult and would never have done magic of any kind, period. So there are a lot of assumptions out there that are, pardon my cussing, but they're full of shit. Completely. And these are people that are not listening to what they're being told and are making assumptions based on their own views. This is not a Garden of Eden situation. This is a situation of people have their minds made up. They take in just enough data to blow another person apart and never listen to what they actually say. And so since they never listened in the first place, they remember it wrong. And this is the biggest problem with disclosure, is people are going to not hear it. It's going to just go Ooh, right over their heads, and they're not even going to register that it happened. Did you know that about a year ago, the Pentagon said that ETs were real?
I'm aware of their disclosure of it, that there are unidentified objects in the sky that none of them know what it is. And I'm not saying that they don't know, but that they are releasing certain information
Mm-hmm.
to the public about a perceived, and I when I say perceived, I mean it from a certain lens, because not everyone in the government, and that word government is being used very liberally here, because there are so many factions of it, and there are so many people just as much in the know as there are people not in the know. And and that's and that needs to be had for the protection of many different areas of government and around the world.
But it makes the potential for abuse incredibly high.
But it makes the potential for protection of it incredibly high as well, due to cognitive dissonance. If a lot of people were to wake up to the realization tomorrow about all of the information that they know, and for it to be a true full disclosure, a lot of people wouldn't be able to handle that. A lot of people would naturally freak out because of too many Terminator movies and alien movies about what they're going to do to us and how they're going to zap us and fry us, and it's very natural. And that's part of the human evolution, is to fear what you don't know, because how would you like it if you were moving forward and you didn't know if you were going to step on solid ground next? It's not a
Uh,
comfortable feeling.
Welcome to my life.
Yes.
I went to meet a man, um, got got my got my memories triggered, and since then it has been one shifting sand after another. And we have a caller. So, caller, are you okay? Caller, you need to unmute your mic. I can't do that for you. Katie, can you unmute him?
They have to do it on their end, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello,
Okay,
caller.
how's that?
Now we
Is
can
that
hear
better?
you.
Okay, there we go. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, I turned my earpiece up a little bit.
Who
Hi, I'm
are
David.
you?
Hi, I've been watching you for about 20 minutes, or a little while. And Penny, I've heard you talk a few times, and I saw you on this show here. I just wanted to mention real quick, I know what you're talking about. I don't have anything to say about the content of the dialogue as such, you know, in terms of what you're speaking of right now, but I was taken as a kid. I know 100%. I had 14 hours missing time in Hayward, California. And
I'm sorry.
a period later, I had a dream. I showed up on a scout ship about 20 feet in diameter over Concord, California. And I had a mission. I knew my mission as a little child was to stay as close to the light pole without hitting it, and to get as close down to the car without landing on it, and stay right there in that little corner. And I turned to tell my co-pilot, which I knew was there without even looking, that I got it. It's like helicopter toggles like that. And I turned to look at him, and it was a German Shepherd like dog sitting in the seat with his paws on the co-pilot. steering wheel. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to take up a bunch of your time, but I'll just run down things that have happened to me like this. You know, I've seen the Akashic records in a situation where I needed to get out of a situation, and I was praying to God, what do I do? And I saw it all happen 5 minutes before in a little dream when I fell asleep in my car, and I woke up and the same thing happened. So they were talking to me and telling me, say the same thing, okay, and that you saw in the dream. I was also told alongside of a semi-truck when I was driving as 18 years old in a 1968 Barracuda, back up, the tire's going to come off. So I backed up. It was in my ear. It wasn't even in my head. It was in my car, in my ear. And I backed up, and the lug nuts and the rim and everything flew off this truck. And so that's another
That's
one.
scary when that happens.
You know, it was. It was like, wait a minute. I didn't even think about the voice first. After it happened, I thought about the voice because I was so interested to see what was going to happen to this tire. And I thought it was going to kill somebody. And it got caught in a chain link fence like a damn baseball glove catching a baseball catcher's mitt, sort of like that. And
Well, that was
but then
luck.
then I had the dreams I had, the Moses dream. I think I was Moses because I show up in this dream where I'm running and there's fireballs coming over my forehead to the rear to me with faces on them like indigenous tribe Santa Claus faces, and within the hair was the smoke. And I turned to see where they were landing, and there were people behind me running, depending on me. Where do we go? And I said, follow me. Oh my God, what do I know? You know, like, okay, well, there's some water. Get in the water because the ground's melting. And they went in the water, and as soon as they went into the water, I knew right away the water was going to boil. So I said, with my special powers, I'm going to lift you out of the water, and I did, and I startled myself, and I woke up. So since then, people in the dream have showed up to me. Now, I'm going to skip a lot of that part right now and tell you what I'm doing right now. Is somebody friended me, and it is a guy named Jonathan Ryan George, and he's Amaru Muru or John Orion, many names, including Tesla, Enki, all the other names that we're in contact. He's in contact with the goddess Sophia, and he speaks to her. She only speaks to him right now. She's not supposed to speak to anybody until the time.
I've heard more than one person that's heard from Sophia. So
okay,
there are a
he's
lot of people out there that think they have exclusive contact, and that's not true.
Well, if you talk to this gentleman, I brought him out here for this reason. He was born into the family where his two grandfathers were John George Trump and John Ryan George. I think John George Ryan or John. I'm not sure of the name of the other grandpa, but he was born into the family, and his family members told him that he was Tesla, or they didn't really tell him this, but he figured it out later on. He was going to be King of Great Britain. Well, he's here at my house. I have him as a roommate now. And we've been going on podcasts and things like this. And I think it's really important that I think this is sort of what we're all leading up to with all this information that we're speaking of the Space Force and what's involved even right now. Like maybe I'm working in space right now with Trump and his special Space Force because it was a time travel thing. You know, is that can I let you just leave you with that and just comment on some of this stuff, or you want to chat back to me and I'll stay on? Or
I would like to talk with you for a moment.
Okay.
I'll let you, Gabe.
Okay, well, the first thing that we need to remember, sir, is that when it comes to who we are in this present moment, there are many aspects of ourselves, just like the tree theory. When we think of our higher self, we're thinking of the greater branch we are connected to. But that branch may have many leaves to it, and that branch may be connected to an even greater branch and to other people.
Okay.
And just as we may see a vision from our past life or
Okay.
past lives or even future lives, it's
All right.
very important to consider that just as we are able to see visions from these past lives, that we are also able to see visions from other selves connected to our higher self. So it's not always necessarily that we were this person or we were
Okay.
that person, because many people tend to fall into the thinking that they were born in one life and then they go into the next and then it goes into the next. And we have this very simplistic chronology of one, then two, then 3, then the other.
Right.
But it's really a lot more vast than that. And it's
An
not
oversoul.
yes, and it's not to say that we weren't these people,
Right.
but it's not to say that we were only these people.
Okay.
Because
Wow.
just as there's a very important person, for example, a celebrity, and not going to list any examples of celebrities, but
Okay.
there may be a few dozen people who share that same higher self or oversoul, or a number of different people that share similar higher selves that
Yeah.
are branched to an even greater overarching oversoul.
Wow.
But not just that. Just as we're able to turn on the television and flip through the channels, it is also not so inconceivable to flip through the different stations of the Akashic records and see the records of other peoples and see what messages those messages are bringing to us to carry. And that's why discernment is so very important to alleviate the stress of many people, not only in the Anunnaki community, but in many communities, because a lot of people tend to view an experience and they become stressed and they wonder, why me?
Oh.
Why is
Oh,
this
wow.
only happening to me? And
Oh,
it
wow.
may not simply be happening to them, it could be happening to others. And it's part of this hive mind, you could say, to help us integrate with each other.
Hives?
Hive,
H-I-V-E-Z?
yes, HIV,
Okay.
hive mind. So
Okay.
just as we learn how to remember ourselves, we learn how to connect with each other in these ways. And through our
Oh.
spiritual practices, we learn how to create that discernment, but also we learn how to create that connection through oneness, or what
I see.
people refer to as nirvana, or the collective mind.
I see. Interesting.
One of the things that I had to deal with when I had my memories reactivated was that I had been put through a technological version of regression hypnosis while I was in these programs, because the programs wanted to know who I had been. And so I have the memories of those regressions. And at first, I thought I was the only one. And then I started meeting other people who had memories of those being those same beings. And I have come to the understanding that there are higher selves who incarnate into as fractals into more than one person.
Wow.
And so I know that my particular higher self, there are at least a minimum of 1,000 other individual humans who are parts of her.
I understand. I
And
was told
so,
myself. Sorry to interrupt you. Let me just
but
say it right
but
along the same line.
just be that doesn't
Go ahead.
mean that I am any less than, but
Right?
neither are those other almost 1,000 people. And they're not all
Yeah.
female, some are male. I've met
Right.
several of them that are also fractals of my same higher self. And some of them are still stuck in, I'm the only one. And it's a really big ego rush if you have nothing else in your
Yeah.
life, you know, seriously. But we're here for a reason. We have a mission. Work your mission. Don't worry about who you were.
I would
Okay.
like to insert a joke here.
Okay.
You know how people say, oh, if there was only more than one of me, you have no idea. Spirit's 10 steps ahead of you.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I was told there
I
was 30 of me,
Yeah.
and two
I
of them
know
were next to me. So, go ahead.
I know that there are at least 1,000 of me because one of the ET races that I interact with has informed me that there are over 1,000 and that they each have a guardian because they've been waiting for who wakes up first.
Whoa. Whoa.
So
That's crazy. It's just like God to fractal himself, and the Great Bang was about the vibration splitting up into a gazillion pieces.
well, this is my higher self has a job to do,
Yeah.
and she wanted enough bodies available to be able to do it.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you
So
have
interesting.
you have to stop thinking in terms of you are an individual, because from a spirit collective point of view, you're not. You're a
Okay.
fractal of a higher being, and you
Okay,
are
right.
here for that higher being to accomplish something.
It's also
Okay.
important to remember this. Very, very, very important. Just because a person may not necessarily be awake in the individual standpoint through this physical existence doesn't
Right.
mean that they are not serving a purpose. Just
That's true.
as it's like having your feelers out, quite literally
Mhm.
speaking. And
I see.
so the higher self, and all the people that we are connected to as well in those higher states, we're able to, just like the many neurons of the brain, we're
Mhm.
able to collectively make informed decisions. And for those who are a little more awake, can work towards making these decisions in this life. But get this.
Have you guys been through this, what I'm going through right now?
Yes.
Okay.
To some degree or
So
another.
helpful.
That
Yeah.
yes. Gabriel's being non-committal, but that's why I invited him to my show. Is he's one of us.
Okay.
Who am I?
So,
What doesn't matter anymore?
yeah, who are you guys, man?
Who are us? Well, it's like this. I have a job to do, and I'm safer if nobody knows who I am.
That's good. That's a good way to think about it, I think, because I was worried about knowing this gentleman that I have. He's living with me, and he's born into that family, and he's very supportive like you guys. He's liberating me as well. And you're very helpful. This is something I need to hear, obviously.
You're
Well,
welcome.
I wish him well in his pathway. And at the beginning, everybody is very arrogant, and I'd say most of us outgrow it.
Yeah. Thank you, Penny. So awesome.
You're welcome. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll let you guys
in.
go back to talking. Yeah. I think I have you as a friend, Penny. So I have Awakened Visual as well. Now, let me just say one thing. Awakened Visual is about the planets that are here. And I have surface level images of impact zones and debris fields. There's a couple of moons that are traveling with our moon right now that I have on there. I think Mars has been hit. I think we're actually using plasma weapons to knock these things out of the way of each other, because it's like a soup kitchen out there. Since this thing came from below, it kind of pulled everything in. All these gas planets and everything is just awry. So you'll see if you look at my Awakened Visual page. I also have moons, rocks, and clusters that I just posted. Very, very interesting. Go and look at it if you like. And it's Nibiru Planet X is here, yes.
Well, let me also say this to you,
Okay.
because this is very, very important.
Okay.
Let's take the example of the infinite. A lot of people call the infinite spirit or source. I don't refer to the infinite necessarily as spirit, although everything comes of it, and most certainly spirit in regards to the energetic interaction and molecularization of it. And a lot of people call it source, but I don't call it source, because to call it source is to indicate that there is a beginning. And when it comes to the infinite, or even just the nature of our reality in general, it is non-linear. So it's like, where's the beginning? There's a lot of beginnings. There's a lot of ends. And it goes in circles. And our reality, in a greater sense, although we generally experience it linearly, for the pure purpose of construction, our reality is actually being experienced in greater states non-linearly. So we may be experiencing something, and it may be happening in real time, but what is that real time when it's happening? Is it happening now?
Oh my gosh.
Is it happening in the past? Is it the future?
Oh my God, I'm getting chills all over my body. Like, my guys are telling me, see what I've been trying to tell you.
See?
I'm wondering, am I just seeing this? Just one of me is seeing it, and I'm making all this stuff up for everybody that can't see it or don't want to see it or something like that. Oh my gosh. Okay, keep going.
Oh, okay, I'll keep going. So recently a person referred to me as a truth seeker, and I was like, well, there was a time when perhaps I would have called myself a truth seeker. But now I know that the truth can change from day to day because of the nonlinear nature of our reality. And just as what is true right now, there may be certain things that come into being through our interaction and through other people's interaction to make subtle changes. And I've even observed this to some degree, and was confused because a certain thing was a certain way, and then it was like, huh, that's different. And it's just interesting.
Sounds like a Star Trek episode, one of the really weird ones.
Yes, like Q. Yep.
Yeah, like Q.
Like Q, yeah, Q is everywhere.
We're not talking about QAnon here. We're talking about Star Trek Q, which was basically a deity.
The God Matrix, Sophia, as it were, as she was. Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot, you guys.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope that helped.
Oh, it sure did. I feel really good. I get chills all over myself, and my whole family's been telling me, hey, back off on this stuff. And I think you might be right that even though that I'm experiencing this, to display it as such in a fashion that, hey, look out, or hey, watch out, look what I see and you don't, is I got to back off and liberate that whole thought process, rethink things.
And remember to be understanding towards family members and to friends, because just as it is important for a person through some bodily lives to go through certain awakening moments, not every single life is necessarily meant for that, to serve as a purpose for the collective good. Because let's take the nature of gravity, for example. If we didn't have gravity, we'd just be floating around. There'd be nothing on the planet, right? Well, also, our bodies will go into atrophy. We wouldn't have muscles because there would be no gravity to produce the resistance. So,
Right.
so we see all these areas of resistance in our lives: physical resistance, emotional resistance, mental resistance, energetic resistance. And those
Well,
people serve a very important purpose, a very important role in their lives for ourselves, and just as we do for them, because we
ah,
are growing in a lot of different ways. And just because they may not resonate with something, there may be something else that they may resonate with and get completely, and be able to help others in those ways, and
right.
them in their
Mm,
ways serve a good. So it's
Jeez.
just about where we are.
Okay. So helpful, enlightening, and just the word entails in your name. I guess that's a good way to say it. In the Global Enlightenment uh, radio network. Thank you very, very much, you guys.
You're
I'm going
welcome.
to plug you. Okay. Talk to you soon again, I hope. Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, that was interesting. Not where I thought we were going to end up going, but okay.
Yeah.
Now, since we did bring up the Annuna groups
Hmm.
and the Anunnaki community, I would like to state that I have nothing against them. I just outgrew them and finally figured out my memories from the space programs, from the Black Ops, because they're not all of my memories are from space. And so it reached a point where that part of my story had integrated itself into me, and I moved on. Now, I still have many friends that are in that community, and most of them are in the stage of they know they are part of a collective, they know they're not the only one, and they know they have a reason to be here and they're doing it rather than bragging about it. And this is a good place to be. But that doesn't mean that the folks at the beginning still stuck in ego are any less than. It's just a stage we go through.
Yes, I agree with you. And let's go back to the black goo. Ooh, the black goo. What about the black goo, Gabe? All right. Well, well, it's important to remember that us as a species, we are meant to naturally be at a certain point in our neurological capabilities. We may be able to improve through technology, but although we may be able to improve, how does that affect the physical body? Can the physical body keep up? And is that good for it? Well,
I don't think that's good for it. That's why I've been talking about it, is because I want people to understand there are drawbacks, there are complications. It changes who you are at a very core level. It interferes with normal development of both the individual and the species. And I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice by jumping the gun.
and although we may be doing ourselves a disservice in the greater collective mind of spirit and all things, it's part of our natural path of evolution to find ourselves again, so that we may come to be able to serve and be comfortable in our position in life through the systems, through the ecosystems, through the spiritual systems. And the reason why I say that And this goes back to the Genesis story of Eden, metaphorically speaking. Just as there was the male and female representing the interior and exterior forces of energy to produce a balance in the nature of that, so that we can become present in our being and in our knowing. There is also the concept of the fruit being the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. And what the monks, and I always like going to the monks because they say it so simply, it's give and take. It's never take and give. And that is what my master taught me. And the nature of learning how to become one with all things through the Buddha mind, the collective mind, is that you have to learn how to integrate yourself and be one in your Dharma. And as you continue to be one in your Dharma, you become one with all things because you serve your purpose in life and you achieve your nirvana in your own way, whether it's being one with nirvana quite literally by being one in the collective through that observation of it, through that multi-mind, or whether it's being one in the sense of your individuality. When you practice being one, you receive the benefits of the whole. And this is why God in the Bible is often viewed as a gardener. When nature works together accordingly as one, it is in harmony, and everything is a service to each other. And even the things that appear not necessarily to be a service in the moment. For example, the chipmunk going to eat the leaf. Ow, the tree may say. And just as the bird swoops down to eat the chipmunk, ow, the chipmunk may say. And just as the cat may swoop up to catch the bird, ow, the bird may say. It is all in harmony with each other, and they all receive the benefits through their lives. But when we try to take it, we become in disservice and disharmony because we try to take rather than give and then receive. And that is the only true way to become one and to become in harmony with our greater selves, with our higher selves, through the prism of light in our being, through the chakras and the energy centers of our collective selves. And if we fall out of harmony, then we will continue to repeat the lessons until the lessons take hold. And that is why the Anunnaki have been so vocal in the harmony of being one. For example, we can take a look at the many Christian religions and where did Christ come from? Where did he come back from when he went to start healing people? He came back from the East. Well, what rises in the East? The sun, correct? And there's also people in the East who are masters of spirit, who practice those ways. And then we see Christ helping others heal. And there's a Bible verse where he felt the energy flow out from him into the woman who reached for his cloth, his cloak, his robe. And people who are masters of spirit, they're able to sense the shifts in their energy, and especially when a person reaches out to attach themselves to your energy because they are so thirsty, not of water, but of the energy of their life because it's dwindled so greatly. And then people go to say, go to Christ and you shall be saved. Well, of course, you shall be saved in that sense, not because it is Christ that is saving you, but it's that you become whole. And just as there is a Christ, there is a Buddha, there is a Mohammed, there are many who serve as the collective one who bring their teachings to us to show us that in order to become one in our being and achieve our evolutions of harmony, that we must practice taking upon these ways internally and not to view it necessarily through the religious sense, through the books that we are taught in, but to go beyond that. For what do the Muslims speak of God, of Allah? They speak of the greater nature, the greatest nature of Allah, being something that is beyond human comprehension. And how beautiful that is, because if you truly think about it, just as there is the infinite and the collective there is the no beginning and no end, the all in the Allah, the all of it. And it is beyond the comprehension because when we continue to go back to the original of what we are learning about, the source of this knowledge being the no source, the infinite, where there is no beginning or end, we come to the understanding that when we take upon these energies and these salvations, that we learn how to become whole, if only for a time, and then to repeat the lesson until we become the saviors that we have been searching for.
That's a point that a lot of folks miss, is that we are supposed to become our own savior. We are supposed to be doing the work no matter how much help we have. That
Yes.
there is no one out there that's going to do it for us. It's our job.
Only to a degree. They can walk with us, beside us, to help show us the path. But it's not that they won't help us. They will, but we have to learn how to walk the path too, and in harmony.
They're not going to carry us if
Right.
we have to walk ourselves.
Yes. That's a good way of saying it, that they're not going to carry us, because it's to indicate that they may walk with us, that we may be in harmony through through unity. And just like in the Christ story, when the person who we refer to as Jesus, when he stumbles because of the weight of the cross he is carrying, what happens? They go to reach out and help him carry it. And it is to show that unity. And that's actually why I really love the Christ story, because a lot of people don't get it, that it's actually one of the greatest Buddhist stories of all time, but yet that just goes over their heads.
They miss a lot of it. What I had reached the point where that I had lost all of my faith completely and was basically atheistic. And I was contacted by another Annuna, and he showed me a different side of the Jesus story, but instead of coming from Buddhism, he came from the Osiris mysteries.
Oh,
And
that had to be fun.
oh, that was an incredibly interesting trip. And he had a thesis that the man, the actual human, was trying to form a synthesis of Osiris mystery and Judaism at the time to unite Israel and Egypt under one banner. And that a lot of what we see in especially the book of Gospel John, is the deliberate reenactment of the Osiris mysteries, with Mary Magdalene set as Isis. And it was a very interesting way to look at it, and one that really resonated with me, because it did reinstall the divine feminine into what had been a aggressively toxic masculine energy. So it was actually a very healing approach for me, and I'm grateful he shared it with me.
That's awesome. And that's such a good book, the Book of John. And I'm going to share this from now, I haven't said this yet, but I actually grew up in the Catholic religion. My father's family is Baptist. Oh boy. That was fun growing up. I gotta tell you, it was fun.
I grew up in the Church of Christ with a Jewish grandmother. Yeah.
I can only imagine how fun that must have been. Okay, so from the Buddhist, just spiritual standpoint, there's this part in the Book of John, and you know this part, Penny, when Jesus is in the garden, and then the soldiers come, and they come to take him. And we see the reflections, the parallels between this and the original beginning, where we see the garden for the time of people being on earth. And just as when they tried to take rather than give and take in the garden, and then they were outcast from it, we see Jesus in the garden. And what did they do? They cast him out. So why do they cast this character? And I say character because it is the identity of the no mind, of the higher consciousness, of the collective. Why is this cast out from the garden of man? Because the collective mind cannot resonate with the lower energies, because when we focus on the garden of man, we focus on a very limited aspect, and those wisdoms cannot be brought down into the lower vibrations, because the lower vibrations cannot receive the openness and the greater understandings and greater interpretations and collective truths and multiple truths that the greater mind of spirit, of the infinite, of these great collectives can understand and receive in being one with them. So naturally, when we try to impart these greater wisdoms unto the garden of man, and when I say the garden of man, I mean not simply the garden of mankind and womankind, but the lower energies of what is here. When you try to impart that wisdom, you will become cast out from it, because those who resonate with those lower energies, with that lower wisdom of insight, when they are so limited in their focus for their perception, and it's not because of their fault. It is not their fault. It is simply where they are.
It's just the stage that they're in.
Exactly. And it's just like a parent
And
communicating
over
with their child.
over their spirit lifetime,
Yes.
multiple incarnations, they will eventually work out of this.
Yes.
But it's where they are now.
Exactly. And that's why the lifetime for the human being has been so short for so long. And now we see all this rapid evolution. And why is that? Because part of our lifespan being so short, we sought to seek it longer. And we built communities, we built networks, and not only physical networks, but emotional networks, mental networks, spiritual networks. And now, because we went through that aspect of short life, loss, grief, now we are able to expand and evolve in so many beautiful ways. And yes, that has been, it may have been very hard for us, but as a result, we've been able to grow too. And this serves a collective good and harmony to be created by it and for it.
Well, I meant to give you longer, but you talked. um, we're getting near the end of our time, so I promised you could talk about your new Reiki business.
Yes, I am starting up a Reiki business, and I don't have the LLC yet, and I don't have the website yet because between the LLC and the legal fees to get everything established and for the website, well, I found out that's going to cost about like, you know, $600. So I'm making a little GoFundMe thing. I don't have like a GoFundMe page, but I made a like a little money pool in PayPal. So basically, if anybody wants to call me up for a Reiki session and pay me for my service, it would be great to actually be fed for helping another person heal.
Uh,
So that would be great.
I will endorse his Reiki. I'm one of those people that don't feel it. People send me Reiki, and it usually makes me sick. Um, and Gabriel has been able to get through all of my layers of shielding without me having to drop any, and be able to heal things that were wrong. He is one of 4 individuals that I know that can do this consistently. So I consider him one of the greatest, and wanted to make sure that his information is out there. So how, since you don't have your website up yet, how do people get a hold of you?
You can contact me at my number. It is 513-722-5616. And yes, that is my personal number. You can call me at it anytime you like and talk to me for hours on end if you like. I am here of service to help you. And even if you can't afford a Reiki session, that's okay because I believe that whatever we give, we get back in some way or another. So, and a lot of times when I help a person, what happens is their frequency changes and then their life starts to change and then things start looking up for them. And if you want to send me a donation later, hey, go ahead. Or if you just want to send people my way who are able to offer payment for a session, that's great too. And also remember, every single person that you refer to me, I will give you a free session. So keep that in mind. Also, another way to contact me, an email that I'm using right now is Spiritual Wisdom with Gabriel. So that's just, the word spiritual, then wisdom, then Gabriel. And that's just at gmail.com. So my name is spelled Gabriel. I don't think I needed to say that because, Gabriel's a pretty popular name. But that's my email.
Lots of folks can spell it because of the archangel.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
That's
kind of a popular character.
Yes, he is, isn't he? So, yeah, you can contact me at that email, or you can contact me on Facebook. My last name is Hackney, Hackney. So just look me up on Facebook. I have long blonde hair, and I look kind of feminine. I look very feminine in my current profile picture. Um,
Yeah, he's
and
got this wild curly hair that's
yeah,
shoulder length or longer, and I always thought it was attractive, but
yep, yep. And right now I kind of have a weird beard going on, and I may not look as feminine as I once did, but trust me, you'll like the I think you'll like the profile picture, or at least find it a little um, humorous, at least hopefully. But seriously, that's how you can contact me,
you
and
must have really been pestered about that because you're blushing.
yeah, I have been pestered about it a little bit, just all in good fun. But yeah, that's so that's how you will find me on Facebook, and I'm available on Messenger, so you can get a hold of me on Messenger. Just send me a friend request, and then I'll see your messages pop up in Messenger, or I'll have to hunt and find through it. But yeah, you can also send me a text to my number. Again, my number is 513-722-5616. I do respond to text messages. And if my voicemail is full, send me a text message saying that you would like to receive a Reiki session from me, or that you know somebody that would like to receive a session. But know that I am not only able to direct the energy to the energetic body, the subtle bodies. I'm not saying that I can cure a person of a disease. I'm not saying that. I'm not a healer in that sense, but I have worked with people who I've directed the energy of spirit to certain areas where they were having pains in their body, and during those moments, through continued sessions, those issues seem to have gotten better simply because we help to get the energy flowing through their body. So it's in the same sense of, water is not a cure, but drinking water regularly and in a great amount, not in excess, but in a good amount, can help heal your body in a lot of different ways. And just as people need water, people need to learn how to embrace the energy of spirit, which is why Reiki is called Reiki, universal energy, prana, chi, ki. So it's very beneficial, very helpful, and it looks like is time about up.
We've got 9 minutes.
9 minutes, awesome. That is fantastic. What should we do with the rest of these 9 minutes?
Explain to people who don't know what Reiki is.
Okay, Reiki is it's the Japanese word for universal energy or life force. And just as there is the energy that flows through our bodies, through our neurology, there is the molecularization of energy that flows through us, in us, and around us. And this is what we refer to as our chakras and our auras. And just as there is an intelligence to our brains in the neurological sense, there is an intelligence in the energetic sense for our subtle bodies, for how this connects to spirit, through spirit, for the evolution of our souls, of our higher selves. And this is really just like, think about it like a computer. Each chakra can be viewed as like a program, and they interact with the organs of our body, and they work with us not only in the physical sense, but in the emotional sense and in the mental sense. But from an energetic aspect for the nature of it, for what its core is, for how it interacts with us. And I refer to it like this: there's the four cornerstones of our health. There's our physical health, there's our emotional health, there's our mental health, and then there is our spiritual health. By working with our chakras and our energy centers, we are able to take control of our lives and our energy by learning how to work with it on the energetic level. And by learning how to work with it on these levels, we learn how to create greater peace for ourselves and our lives. And we're able to clear out a lot of the energetic sabotage. And many times, a lot of the self sabotage that people may be experiencing on the emotional level or the mental level, which so very often can affect us on the physical level through the development of ailments in the body that are associated with those emotional issues. So, by clearing this out on the energetic level, we learn how to become peaceful and centered in our being. And being centered is not selfish in any way. You have every right as a spiritual person, as an individual, to be healthy and happy in your being. And it's like if you keep trying to give yourself to everyone else, then what do you have left over for yourself? And through this experience,
that was, I reached that point doing counseling.
yes.
And when I was picked up by the CIA and they broke my shoulder, I had to suddenly stop and say, wait a minute, guys, I'm not able to give anybody anything right now. And it was shocking how many people could not understand that. But I didn't think it was selfish at the time because I had nothing to give. I mean, what good is talking to someone who has nothing to give you?
Allow me to share with you, the audience, the wisdom of how to become full in your energy. When you practice this oneness and the meditations that I teach you, and I do share with the people who I provide Reiki sessions for, I provide them with a meditation during the Reiki session that helps them become aligned and centered in their energy. And then they can repeat that meditation daily for themselves through self care. But the importance of becoming centered in your being is so that when you do give to another, it is not zapping the energy out from you, but rather you are allowing a connection to be made from spirit to provide the other person with the guidance, the wisdom, or the energy that they need. And you will know what that other person needs through your knowing, through that steadiness of being, through the silence that allows you to know without knowing. And what I mean by know without knowing is that you may know, but it doesn't mean that you are aware of all of the fundamentals and all of the intricacies as to it. For example, you may be aware that a person is thirsty. You don't need to be aware of all of the different organs that are being affected with all the different subtleties that are being expressed as a collective thirst in a person. Why would you need to know about that? It's very obvious on the surface. And that is what I mean by know without knowing. and it just becomes so much simpler for your whole life. It just makes life so much easier for yourself, because you stop worrying about so many of the little things, and you just focus on what's important, on what's right now, and you're able to achieve a happiness for yourself that is so much greater than what you have experienced before, because this peacefulness, it rises in its energy, and the energy is so great that it's like you are so happy, but it's not like a short high of happiness. Rather, it is simply a great reservoir of energy that you continue to be in and flourish in, and it's just so, it feels so good, and so it's so peaceful, so wonderful. And that's what I help people achieve through the Reiki experience.
Okay, that that pretty much covers what you did with me too. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, with me, I was being so drained so much of the time that you just basically plugged me into the infinite and left it there,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked really well. So,
I remember you were saying that you were feeling energy like tingle in you, like through your fingers. Like, what's
uh,
happening? Yeah,
it was like,
yeah. That was great.
that was actually at the time that was a lifesaver. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's every now and then we need a little bit of saving here and there.
Well, our time is up. Thank you for coming on my show. Um, I really enjoyed this. We have a show coming up following mine. It's called Goddesses and Devils with Amanda McManus and Katie Camara. And with that, I will log out and thank y'all.